Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Divine Feminine Healers podcast. It is your host, Angelica. For those of you who do not know me, I've been an intuitive healer as an Ayurvedic practitioner, Reiki master, Kundalini yogi for the past 10 years, and I've had my own spiritual business for the past 5. And now I serve women in learning how to create an intuitive IG strategy so that they can start getting paid for all those beautiful gifts that you have acquired. And it's something that I just feel so passionate about because I see a lot of women have these certifications and all this experience, and it's just collecting dust on the shelf. And I'm such a firm believer in really knowing your value so that you can bring it forth and out into the world. So I'm diving a lot into what really keeps us from getting paid from doing our intuitive gifts. And a lot of times I see is that healers really avoid the business part of their offerings because they're just so enchanted with the creative part of making it and getting to serve their people. And it's super hard for them to market and to sell their offerings because it's ultimately selling a part of who they are. And I get this question so much. Can I get in clients if I don't want to post on Instagram? Because think about it. If you have to put yourself out there, Instagram is like the place that you have to be totally show yourself. It's photo based. It's now video based. There is no hiding behind just writing out a blog and no one getting to see you. You have to share about your story for your people to connect with you. And you got to show your face and you got to show up consistently. So it could be so confronting for people. Now, there's a lot of things here. Of course, no. Do I think the only way to get in new clients is through Instagram? Absolutely not. That just happens to be the way that I've built my business and how I attract the women that I help to grow their business. If, for example, you're using other types of social media mediums like TikTok, or you just listen to a podcast, you're not even on Instagram, that might not be the medium for you because it's truly the mediums that you're using that are probably going to be where your clients are on too. Because if you have a spiritual business, your client truly mirrors you in a lot of different ways. That isn't always for every business, but it is if you have a spiritual business. And if you feel such this strong charge towards not wanting to post on Instagram, I implore you to get really curious on why you're so charged up on it in the first place. Because I don't know about you, but usually if I have a strong fear or adversity to doing something, I know it's always the thing that I have to be doing. So Stephen Pressfield talks about this. He has so many great books on art and creativity, like The War of Art. It's really great. And he talks about capital R resistance and basically saying that thing that you feel the most resistance for is usually the thing that's going to help you to break through. And I say this all the time. Our greatest challenges and obstacles become our greatest superpower. But somehow, when we got on this healing journey and we learned the lesson that you can choose to live your life in a more positive way and you get to choose happiness, I think we also thought that we get to choose comfort in every way. I mean, I would way rather just be positive all the time. It's way more comfortable to just cover up my problems and say I'm positive rather than leaning into the parts of myself that don't actually feel worthy to be positive. And we go through that whole spiritual journey where then we realize, oh, could we just be positive? And it works for a while. And then all of a sudden we realize our problems are still underneath there. And we're actually still feeling unworthy and sad and angry and all those emotions that haven't really gotten digested. And I think it really is a balance of both, of leaning into the things that do feel good for you as an entrepreneur and trusting that and trusting your intuition. And then also getting really curious if you have a strong resistance towards something, that could be the gateway towards something. Not always, but it could be. So today we're going to get into why you may feel such a strong resistance to Instagram. And really what I see this as, if you have that strong resistance towards it, you may have a strong resistance to just marketing and you're selling yourself in general. Lots of healers have this. Why? Because we have this collective fear of being seen. Way long ago, we've probably had a lot of past lives where we were burned at the stake, where we were literally crucified for sharing our intuitive gifts. It was seen as not acceptable by society. And some of us literally lost our lives because of that. So now, in this lifetime, when it is time to show up with our intuitive gifts and start to share it and make it visible in the world, especially in this day and age where we have to make it so visible, it is super triggering to us. And we're like, no, I'm going to do everything in my power not to show my face, not to put my offering out there. And we'll have these self-sabotaging behaviors, which I'll get into what that looks like. But I just want to share my personal experience with this fear of being seen. It's a huge wound that I'm constantly having to work with, but it specifically showed up with me having this huge resistance against Instagram. So the first year I had my business and I started my Instagram, when I then had a business partner, I was very firm and clear that I did not want to show my face. I would write all the content and I love writing all the posts, but I did not want to show up on Instagram. Why? Because I thought it sounded too salesy. I thought people would think, oh, I'm just trying to sell them something. I also saw all the ways that people were showing up in the coaching world, and I thought it was so generic and so overdone, and I didn't want to show up like that. So basically, I was coming up with all these excuses of why I didn't want to show myself, because I didn't want to be like how everyone else was. And I thought, if you show up on Instagram, that's how you have to be. And then I also had this thought in my head of all those people who are showing up in their faces, they're just trying to get the attention. I don't want people to think that I'm only doing this just to get the spotlight on me. So I had lots of beliefs about it. And when you have that many beliefs, you just pause and freeze and say, no, it's not for me. So my great business partner at the time said, okay, I'll trust you, know what's best for you, and kind of like put her hands up in the air. And then along the way, she was like, I really think you would like it and enjoy it. I think this would be really great. And somehow it came up to be where a lot of people in our community were asking what my daily routines were, and I would share about them. But honestly, I had this like huge morning routine, and then I want to talk about my eating habits and everything that I did, like kind of like a day in the life. And I was thinking like, gosh, I really don't want to write all of this out. That would just be too much time. And I'm a projector and I'm all about efficiency. So I was like, truly the best way to do this was just to do an Instagram story where I share what my routines are, what I actually do. That's much easier just to show what I'm doing that day and post it. So out of pure efficiency reasons, I started to create my own IG story for that day. And all the fears came up. I was like, oh my God, who's going to see this? This is crazy. This is silly. I think I already did so many takes in the beginning because I'm very Pitta perfectionist. I wanted to be the perfect shot. I mean, it was my first debut showing my face on my Instagram. Then by like the fifth or so Instagram story, I was like, okay, I don't care. Who's even watching this anyways? Like, whatever. And along the way, I just loved posting. It was just like, I got so much pleasure out of showing and sharing what I was doing. I think because for so long I had hid these intuitive practices that I was doing in Ayurveda from everyone, because I thought they would think it was weird or crazy. And it felt so liberating to be like, no, this is me. This is what I do. And it's helped me so much. And I'm so proud to share it. So there was that piece to it too. And then I actually loved like the creating phase of it, of like getting the right shot and showing things to people in a way that would feel like empowering to them. And the feedback was amazing. I mean, I didn't even realize it at first. I just kind of signed off on Instagram and it was like, whatever, no one's going to watch that. And then my business partner was like, oh my God, like go check the DMs. Like we have so many DMs of all of our people like commenting and connecting with us. And we got a new clients from that. And it was just, that part to me was like the most fulfilling, because I felt like because I was sharing more of these vulnerable parts of myself at that time, it connected with people. They were like, yes, like I do these same practices, or, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Like I want to try doing that. Like giving them tips on all these things. Like I felt so alive from it. And that's when I really realized, wow, the more that you share the parts of yourself that you're trying to hide, the more you're going to connect with your clients, the more you're actually going to get a new client, which is what your goal is. You want to serve your people. So that honestly experience, I feel like I kind of just got like shoved into it, but that's what you have to do sometimes, is just like rip off the Band-Aid, have such a non-attachment to what the results are going to be. And you get so immediately surprised. And from then on, I was like, okay, I really actually do enjoy this whole Instagram thing. And maybe I need to get curious on why I'm so resistant to it. And that's when I really started to unveil all these layers of where my fear of being seen really is. So if you are in this stage, you're like, I don't want to post on Instagram, I would first implore you just to get curious on why you don't like posting. Like specifically, what is it? Is it because you don't use Instagram and so it feels like, ugh, what is this app? This is not even how I would express myself. Or is it because you're kind of afraid of what someone else may think? You're afraid that no one's going to watch. You're afraid you don't have enough credibility. You're afraid you don't have the proper camera equipment. You don't have the skills, you're not really a good person talking to camera. Like, notice those other stories that are coming up, because that is really just the fear of being seen showing up in a lot of different costumes. And if you're using Instagram, I can guarantee your future clients are using Instagram. I teach this with a lot of my clients. Your clients are a mirror of who you are. They're like little mini past versions of who you are. That's why they were sent to you, so that you can help them. This isn't the same for every business, but it is the same for a spiritual business. So the more that you can get past that fear, the more you can really connect authentically with your clients. So how can this show up when you're marketing yourself? And I'm going to break it down by the dosha types of how the fear of being seen shows up, because I think this part is really important. It's not just to call ourselves out and shame us of all the ways that we hide, but it's helpful to identify, oh, these are the behaviors that are instilling this fear. Now I know when I'm doing that behavior, I can catch myself and bring awareness so that I can redirect that energy into something that can actually make me be more visible in an authentic way. So let's start with our Vatas first. The fear of being seen usually shows up when they're inconsistent with their posts. And that's because that's that fear of not trusting themselves as being a spiritual leader will come up. So they're going to post, and then they're going to be like, oh, I'm being too spiritual. People are going to think this is too out there, and they'll talk themselves out of it. And that's why they don't start posting consistently. So notice when your beliefs get in the way of you posting again and again. Sometimes they also feel like, oh, I'm being too much, I'm over posting. When in reality, we know that's not the case, that given what the algorithm is and how people have to see a piece of content at least 7 times in order to purchase it. This is actually a marketing fact that came about in the 1930s. It's just like well known in the marketing world. It's totally not the case, but it totally comes up for Vatas. Is if you post inconsistently, that's you afraid of being seen. Another way it comes up is when Vatas distract themselves with new projects rather than finishing ones that they are starting, or ones that are going to show their face and where they have to show up on stories. So I know for myself, I'll do everything on my to-do list, but recording myself and my face that day, because there's still just that fear of like, oh, I don't look my best, or, oh, people are going to judge me, whatever that belief is coming up. And the last thing for Vatas, how the fear shows up, is if they're freeze with all your content ideas and you end up not taking any action. That is you using that as an excuse not to move forward, because you have so many ideas, you're like, you don't know which one to start with, so you don't start at all. I had this one in my business, and it still shows up in my business, where you just get a download of a lot of ideas, and it's hard because you're like, that was a great idea. I want to put that into action, but how do I know which ones I should take into action and which ones I actually need to lean back on for now, which I'm going to get into in a little bit. For now, we're just identifying where this fear really shows up. Okay, the next is for Kaphas. So Kapha is more of the earth and the water sign. Your fear of being seen is going to show up when you avoid putting out content that might trigger someone. So Kaphas tend to be more of the people pleasers. They like to congeal their needs and wants to others. And so they're going to avoid putting out content that may be controversy. They want to be for everybody. They want to be inclusive to everybody. But if that is not what your brand is, and just as people think about it, we're all going to have different opinions. Your opinion is not going to be for everyone. You are not going to be able to speak directly to the needs of your client. They're going to think like, oh, well, she's just saying something generic. Like, how are you standing out from anyone else? If you are not speaking more clearly and specifically to your future client, they need to know that you've been what they've been through and that you can actually help them solve their problem. And that's not going to happen by you avoiding one of those more direct conversations with them. Another way Kaphas have this fear of being seen is hiding behind generic marketing strategies that everyone else is doing. So if it feels like a marketing strategy, like, oh, I'm just doing this because I've seen this on Instagram, and oh, I'm just doing this because I heard that this is what people need to be doing. If it's not something that you feel authentically connected with, and you're just like throwing paint on a wall, that's the energy that's going to be received by your client. They're going to say, oh yeah, here's that thing again. She's just saying that just because every other coach right now is saying that, when really you can find a strategy that really comes from your unique energy type and is actually going to speak to your type of client. And the last way that the fear of being seen shows up for Kappas is when they feel like they have a lack of motivation to sit down and create content. A lot of times when Kappas are out of balance, they feel that lethargy, they feel that lack of motivation. And really, that is just fear that's holding them back. That feel of being frozen and not wanting to move forward is you having to identify, what am I afraid of that's going to happen right now? Am I afraid I'm going to trigger someone? Am I afraid that I'm going to be seen by someone and they're going to try to cancel me? Whatever that fear is needs to be addressed before you start to put yourself out there. And lastly, we have our Pittas. The Pittas fear of being seen. So often Pittas will push quantity of content versus quality. And when you're stuck in that strategy of just trying to post every day versus putting out quality content, your audience is going to read that too. They're going to be like, ugh, this means nothing. And they're not going to like it. They're going to scroll past, and then that's going to put you lower on your algorithm favor. So it's super important that you are strategic about your content and that everything that you put out there that you feel connected to, and it's not just a numbers game. Pittas often also hide by trying to overly perfect their piece of content before putting it out. And sometimes they won't even put it out because they just keep practicing it. If that is you, if you're like trying to get all your T's crossed and I's dotted, sometimes the best thing you could do is just put it out there. I mean, yes, we are putting out content at a higher rate, so there's going to be user error. And if someone's going to unfollow you for a little bit of an alphabet error, then they're probably not your client, right? If they're that much of an inner critic, you probably don't want to work with them. So letting go of that perfectionist mindset, and now I have errors like all the time and it just feels so liberating. Like, I think that makes you human. And for me, I want to work with someone who has those because I know that they're human too. And I know, and I feel like I can relate to them in those ways. And the more that you can address those ways that you're imperfect, especially when you show up on video and like a fly will come like right in my face, or if I show up on video and I have like a matcha mustache or something, like the more you can be like real with yourself in those moments, the more your people are going to be attracted to you. And the last way that Pittas have a fear of being seen is when they distract themselves with creating content that does not show their vulnerable side. So Pittas are really good at wanting to come out as having all the answers and all the knowledge, because they do. They have a lot of wisdom within them. But truly, the best way that people connect with you is when you show that softer side, when you show the ways that you don't have all the answers, when you show the ways that you were stuck in the mud. I don't know about you, but like, that's where I thrive. I want to see the person that I look up to the most because, yes, I love their success, but I research them to know how they got there. I want to know when they were at their worst. I want to know when they were in the mud and they felt like they couldn't go on anymore. I want to hear those stories because those are the real ones. And so your people are going to want to hear that too about you. Okay, so those are all the ways that the fear of being seen shows up. And I say those because it can show up in really sneaky ways, right? Like those all seem like really valid ways to hide yourself, and it's important to address it. So just know if you already have some of those habits, take note of it and just start to clear those off of your daily to-dos. Okay, so now let's get into how can we start to heal this fear of being seen? Well, first, reflect on this. Who is that one person that if they see your content, you are terrified of them seeing it? It could be a past relationship, it could be someone from high school. I know that was for me. Like, it's usually that person that bullied you or you were most intimidated by. And what does their voice sound like? How does it reinforce your fear of being seen? So really take time now to maybe pause this podcast and really journal out, what does this person say? What is that voice? It can feel extremely uncomfortable and painful because we don't want to revisit this. So tread lightly, especially if this came from a traumatic experience and you're not ready to open up this can of worms. I totally understand. But if it came from something that you know you've healed before and you just need to revisit it, I implore you to explore it. Now, reflect and ask yourself, do you believe that this is true about what you are sharing? What this person has said about you in the past, do you believe that it's true for this now moment? And are you going to allow this person to continuously silence you? Why are you giving your power away to this person? Are they even in your life anymore? Do you need to reconcile something with this specific relationship? Or does this relationship just really represent how you are moving forward in different relationships in your life and what you need to heal in different relationships in your life? And most importantly, how you need to love that part of yourself that feels like it cannot be lovable. That's really, it really comes from. So how can you heal this relationship and reclaim the part of yourself you deemed as unlovable? And then think to yourself, what is the cost of me not sharing my voice? And how ridiculous it would be for me to just silence myself based on what this other person said about me in the past. It seems so ridiculous when you can just call it out like that and kind of laugh about it. Then that fear, the charge kind of lessens, right? As soon as you make humor about something, that charge, that shame, it shrinks and you realize how ridiculous it is too. So it takes your time to really be with that and just start to repair that wound for yourself. And sometimes it takes some time to really talk to that voice over and over again. It may show up every single time you want to post, but it will start to dim and you can actually change the tune, just like changing the radio frequency to it so that it can become something that's actually empowering and it's going to help you really show up as your authentic voice when you show up on Instagram. Okay. So once you face that fear of being seen, it's going to be a lot easier then to show up because now there's less of a charge. It's become more neutral. So my thing is when you are in that state of neutrality, just post, put your hands in the air, don't look at it, walk away and continue creating and continue going on with your day. That is the best thing you could do because as we know, surrender is the last part of the manifestation process. That's what you have to do when you create something. You have to let it go and then it's out of your control. Only thing was in your control was being a channel of receiving the creativity that the divine was giving to you so that you could share with others. You're simply the messenger. And then after that, you put your hands in the air and all you can do is walk away. So there are some levels of support that you can give yourself to make this a lot easier, to make yourself feel visible in a way that feels authentic to you. So now I'm going to go through each of the doshas and talk about tools and tips that can help you be more visible on Instagram. So let's go to our Vatas. So we all know that inconsistency is a huge challenge for Vatas. So I recommend organizing a time where you can strategize and you can create your own way of being consistent with posting on Instagram. So I always say, find a way to post authentically and to post consistently in a way that is authentic to your unique energy type. So that does not mean that it would be posting every day. It could be. It could also mean you post only 3 times per week, only once per week in the beginning. But all you can do is really organize and just set aside that time for when you're going to start creating content. And then I say like 1 to 2 days of just creating content and be in that channel. And then creating a separate time for when you're going to edit that content. So this is huge because the difference between the creative process and the marketing process is very different. When you're in the creation process, you are simply becoming a channel and it's kind of a pure thing where it's just your relationship to source and you're channeling. However, when you're marketing, then you need to see it from a different lens where you're packaging it in a way where it's distilled in just a little square box and you only get so many characters to write a caption. That is very different than the creative process. So block off time in your calendar to first do the creation process and then a separate time to do the marketing part of it. And then maybe even a separate time just to deliver it if you don't have an automated system to automatically post your post. And that can feel the hardest for Vatas to just do. But as soon as you have that time to organize for when you create, when you market, and when you post, it's going to feel so much more simple. Another tip for Vatas is to ground your body before you show up on Instagram. So a lot of times the ideas just come through you so quickly and you could talk really fast. You'll notice I have this issue too. The more you can ground and just doing a meditation or a grounding core meditation and then showing up from that place of being grounded and in your power is going to read so much more authentically to your people and it's going to feel a lot better and less chaotic in your own body. And the last tip for Vatas when you're posting is to focus on just one content idea or one offer at a time. It becomes confusing when you're trying to sell more than one thing at a time on your page. Of course, I know that happens. Sometimes we're running like a retreat and a program at the same time or the holidays and things like this. I get it. But ultimately, try to focus on one main offering at a time. It's going to feel so much easier for your brain and balancing everything. And it's going to read so much more simpler to your audience as well. Okay, now for our Kaphas. How can you be more authentically visible? The first thing is to clarify your niche and speak directly to them. So often, Kappas try to be for everyone. You're people pleasers. You're not going to be. You cannot help and save the whole world. You don't have the energetic capacity for it. That's why you're given a physical body, which has its own constraints and restrictions. So it's super important that you really clarify and get specific on who your niche and who your audience really is. The second thing for Kappas is to practice strong boundaries when sharing and connecting with your community on Instagram. Oftentimes, Kappas will just want to answer right away or be there for their people 24/7. And having these loose boundaries is going to leak your energy, and then you're going to feel exhausted from it and you're going to feel resentful. So make sure you have really strong boundaries and when you're checking your DMs and when you're replying back to your people. And lastly, if you're feeling kind of that dull or unmotivated when creating, do a movement practice before you are in the creation phase. Move your body, maybe paint, do breath work, dance. That'll help getting the energy moving and that'll help to spark your creativity. I also have a list on my Instagram page of all these rituals to get into your creative flow again that has nothing to do with your business. It has everything to do with just soaking your creativity. And lastly, for Pittas, how can you be more visible? The first thing is to focus on quality of content versus how often you post. So be sure that you are really focusing on a specific goal and that your content is every single piece of content you feel is working towards this goal, and you're not just putting it out there just because it's more. So I know for me, what really helps is when I choose those 1 to 2 days just to create my posts, I know if I'm trying to push it to 3 days, or if that point where you're kind of drained and you're still just trying to create content just to put it out there, you can feel that energy, that pushing energy. That's when I know that I'm putting too much out there and need to pause. The second thing for Pittas, tame your inner critic voice before showing up on Instagram. If you can meet that voice, talk to it lovingly, and really pump yourself up before Instagram, it's just night and day. It's such a different energy change. It feels good for you. And of course, that's going to bring more to your future clients. And lastly, remind yourself that deep connections are harnessed when you share yourself vulnerably. So the more that you share the parts of yourself that you feel afraid to share, the parts of your stories that you feel don't make you successful, the more your people are going to actually connect with you. And that's when you're really going to get in your dream clients, because they have been through what you've been through and they're excited to go out on the other side with you. Okay. So I hope you have so many resources and support now to face this fear of being seen, and that you can feel more confident in posting on Instagram if you felt like you were not feeling confident before. Truly, Instagram is just a beautiful vehicle for you to get in new clients. I want you to start getting paid for your gifts. So if you would like my 4 strategies to get new clients in via IG, I will DM you. Just send me a message on Instagram at Angelica_feminine_healer. I'll have my Instagram linked in the show notes. Simply send me a DM strategy. That's it. And I'll send you over my free workbook. It has my 4 strategies that I've been using for the past 5 years to grow my Instagram to 19K plus, and to have a consistent stream of clients for the past 5 years. This is the process that I've used. These are the strategies that I've used. They're foolproof method and what I use for all my clients. So just send me a DM, type strategy. That's simply it. And the next reply, I will send you the link so that you can get immediate access to my workbook. And these strategies will have you getting in clients in no time. All right, beautiful people, that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening. If this episode was helpful for you, please share with a friend or family member who would love it too. And I would adore it if you commented, rated, and reviewed on either Apple or Spotify. That helps me so, so much. And I truly love connecting with you in that way. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, wherever you are tuning in from.